Hey guys, I just wanted to do a quick video blog for my blog, Possible Worlds, at www.randyeverest.com. This won't take too long, but I just wanted to cover what's been called the consequence argument and take 5 or 6 minutes and explain it and maybe some of the replies to it and what the significance is. Many of you maybe haven't heard of the consequence argument. Well, it's an argument that is supposed to demonstrate the incompatibility of causal determinism and freedom. That is, they don't go together. The idea might be said you can force someone to do something, or they can do it freely, but you can't force them to do it freely. I subscribe to this position, and it is called incompatibilism about the will. It's important that we distinguish before we even talk about what's going further, what incompatibilism and compatibilism are saying. Incompatibilism says, look, the will is free and it cannot be causally determined to choose as the person does. And on the other hand, compatibilism says, no, a person can still be free and yet cause to choose what they choose. So a lot of times, especially my fellow Christians who are not philosophically trained may think compatibilism means that God's sovereignty and human freedom go together. Well, everyone wants to claim that, right? Every Orthodox Christian wants to claim that. So that's not what we're saying goes together or doesn't go together. That's not under the question. The question is whether or not causal determinism goes with freedom of the will. So causal determinism does not necessarily have to be a synonym for sovereignty. We want to dig deep and be precise so that we're not having two separate arguments. All right, so let me get the principle up here. If it is not up to me that P, where P stands for any claim or proposition or truth, if it's not up to me that P, and Q, where Q stands for another proposition or truth, is a necessary consequence of P, then it is not up to me that Q. So if it's not up to me that P, then it's not up to me that Q, assuming that Q is a necessary consequence of P. All right? So here's an example. Standard picture of dinosaurs is that dinosaurs are now extinct. Well, let's talk about me personally, Randy Everest. Was it up to me that dinosaurs are extinct? No, it's not up to me that P, where P stands for dinosaurs are now extinct. But a necessary consequence of dinosaurs being extinct is that I have never seen a living dinosaur, right? How could I, given my age? You know that some of you know I was born in 1982. Those dinosaurs weren't, T-Rex weren't around. It wasn't up to me that that a T-Rex isn't there, and a necessary consequence of a T-Rex not being there is that I have not seen a living T-Rex. Therefore, it seems like it's not up to me as to whether or not I have seen a living dinosaur, right? That seems to confirm the principle. And that illustration and the principle comes from Peter van Inwagen's book, Metaphysics. This is the 3rd edition. You guys should get it. It's awesome, even though I disagree with lots of stuff he says in there. But it's still good. It makes you think. All right, so it's not up to me that P, and Q is a necessary consequence of P, then it's not up to me that Q, and we gave a dinosaur example. It's not up to me that the dinosaurs went extinct, and a necessary consequence of that, given that you know my age, is that I've not seen a living dinosaur. Therefore, it's not up to me as to whether or not I've seen a living dinosaur. So let's apply this to causal determinism. Causal determinism is that the laws of nature plus the initial conditions of the universe entail or result in all of the actions of history, including my present actions. So in theistic causal determinism, you have God being involved both in the laws of nature and the initial conditions of the universe. So you have both of that going on. So it's kind of like a domino effect. If you set up this big chain of dominoes and you knock over the dominoes, and boom, they cause all the rest of the dominoes, and it follows. If you could describe the laws and all the facts of all the physical facts there are, you would get the dominoes falling just the way that they do in fact fall. And this is what it means. It's not just physical necessarily, because God could be involved and he's not a material being. But this is the idea of causal determinism. So let's apply it here. Is it up to me that the laws of nature and the initial conditions of the universe are what they are? Well, no, of course it's not. I wasn't around then. I didn't inform God what to do, and if we're not, if you're an atheist or whatever, you're a skeptic of some kind, you certainly didn't decide, but we didn't decide. I didn't decide what the laws of nature and the initial conditions of the universe are. So it's not up to me that P, where P is the laws of nature and initial conditions. But you know what a necessary consequence of that is? Given that that just describes causal determinism, a necessary consequence is Q, that is, my present actions. And if it's not up to me that the laws of nature and initial conditions of the universe are what they are, and those result in my present actions, that is, my present actions are a necessary consequence, then my present actions are not up to me. It is not up to me that I am doing what I'm doing, if that's true. And now you see there's a definite problem here. This argument is taken to show the incompatibility of causal determinism with freedom of the will, because we think that a person's being free entails in some way that it is up to them. The choice is actually up to them. But now we've actually shown causal determinism where the laws of nature and initial conditions aren't up to anyone, therefore their present actions are not open to anyone. Further, or up to anyone. Further, we typically take freedom to be needed for moral responsibility. So the idea is if it's not up to me that X, then I'm not morally responsible for X. It wasn't up to me that the Holocaust happened, therefore I'm not responsible for the Holocaust, right? It wasn't up to me that Richard Nixon, did what he did with Watergate, or that people's civil liberties have been violated, or all sorts of things. And in any case where you show me a counterexample, it turns out where I'm morally responsible that I was involved, or it can be reduced to show where I was involved in leading to a consequence of it. So things are up to me, and they end up being my moral responsibility. So what are the possible answers here? Well, there's a few routes to take. The first route to take about this whole laws of nature and initial conditions stuff and my present actions not being free, we can just say causal determinism is false. This is the libertarian freedom answer. We just say, well, as it turns out, we're not causally determined, so my actions are up to me. That's one way to look at it, and that is under the umbrella of incompatibilism. But there's another answer under the umbrella of incompatibilism, and it says that, well, causal determinism is true, and we are not free. This is what's called the hard determinist answer. So if you're a hard determinist, you agree with the incompatibilist, but you also say, it turns out we're not free. Now, I think this position is incoherent, but let's just suppose it is, and suppose it's coherent, and we'll just say that that's a possible answer. This has two subvarieties. One, we're not free, and freedom is needed for moral responsibility, so we're not really morally responsible for anything. Punishment, like incarceration, fines, all that stuff, that's purely pragmatic rather than moral. Or two, we can say we are not free, and freedom is not needed for moral responsibility. And in that case, they'd have to come up with some account of, true moral responsibility while not being free. There's a third answer. It's not the incompatibilist answer, it's called the compatibilist answer, and it's that causal determinism is true, but the principle discussed is false. So they say, okay, we still think causal determinism is true, but as it turns out, if it's not up to me that P and Q is a necessary consequence of P, then it is not up to me that Q. It turns out that that whole principle is false. Now that's really interesting because this principle seems really intuitive, and it would seem like it would be a hard thing to deny. I'm sure not impossible. Somebody's probably come up with something. But I just wanted to take these several minutes and discuss that because it has interesting impacts on our philosophy and our theology. Do we really think we're morally responsible for sin? Yes, we do. Does it seem like we have freely chosen to sin, and because of that, death results? So death by sin, right? That seems to have an impact. I'm not trying to be simplistic. I'm just saying you have a trajectory of how you interpret biblical texts, or how you inform your theology, or how you inform your philosophy based on what you do with this consequence argument. Well, comment in the section below, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you.